This episode is brought to you by DistroKid.
When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Skims or Allbirds, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and great marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling and for shoppers buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. It's home of ShopPay, the #1 checkout in the world. You can use it to boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going through to checkout. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/income.
It's Throwback Thursday.
Hey everybody, Chris DeMakes a podcast producer, Chris Fafalius here. It's February now, and I know we can all tend to get a little down this time of year, so I thought we'd throw it back to an uplifting episode with a cool guy, Jon Foreman of Switchfoot. Jon came on the pod back in March of 2022 to discuss the writing and recording of Switchfoot's 2003 smash hit, Meant to Live. This song is packed with themes of existentialism and the longing for something greater. This song struck a chord with audiences worldwide, becoming a defining rock song of its time. Jon is as thoughtful and interesting as they come, and he shares stories about the creative process behind the track, as well as the philosophical ideas that inspired it. And that riff, man, that riff is huge. They get into that too. This is a good one, but before we dive into it, let me remind you to check out our Patreon at chrisdemakes.com. Subscribing gives you instant access to the After Party podcast and tons of other exclusive content. Your support keeps this show running, and we can't thank you enough for being part of it. That's chrisdemakes.com. Okay, let's get to it. From March of 2022, this is episode 95 of Chris DeMakes a Podcast. Jon Foreman discusses Switchfoot's Meant to Live.
Hey everyone, today's guest is Jon Foreman, guitarist and lead vocalist for the San Diego, California rock band Switchfoot. Together we break down the writing, recording, and release of the band's massive breakout hit single, Meant to Live, taken from their 2003 major label debut, The Beautiful Letdown. Jon mentioned that oddly enough, he wrote this big rock song with massive guitars on an acoustic guitar very quickly in one sitting. The song was written late in the writing process for the album, so Jon didn't even have a chance to demo the tune. However, once in the studio, it was the first song the band recorded. He talked about how producer John Fields liked to work at a breakneck pace, keeping the spontaneity and energy flowing at all times while they recorded, something Jon feels helped the immediacy of the recording. I told Jon that the song has some of the biggest and fattest guitars, albeit with an underlying cleanliness and sparkle to them, which is funny considering he scrambled and asked a friend if he could borrow some amps before the sessions began. I think he picked the right ones. For all this and a whole lot more, stick around. This is a fun one.
Hey, have you heard? Chris DeMakes a podcast. Hey, have you heard? Chris DeMakes a podcast. Hey, have you heard? Chris DeMakes a podcast. Hey, have you heard? Chris DeMakes a podcast.
I just dropped out of college, and
Good for you, me too.
and you drop out of college and you've got a lot of extra time on your hands. And I was renting an apartment down near the beach, and I actually wrote it on an acoustic guitar, which is kind of odd because it's definitely an electric guitar kind of riff.
For sure.
But I remember playing around with just that one particular interval of that, feeling the lower string bend, which isn't that common.
Yeah.
And letting the the one above it resonate at the same time. And that's kind of where the song came from, I suppose.
That string bend's awesome. I still can't get it right. I've kept playing with it. And I'm not a string bend guy. Never really done much of that stuff. And it's tricky if you haven't. And I could probably fool someone if I was a cover band at the bar down the road. But other than that, not great. But that part's really cool.
I was a big fan of B.B. King, and he could make just one note be the meal, you know, and where you think you hear that one note and that's all you needed, you know? So, and he definitely was my inspiration in a lot of ways as a kid.
Now, this was some time ago when you wrote this. Did you have a Pro Tools setup? How did you demo the song or anything like that?
You remember Cakewalk?
Yeah.
I had a cracked version of Cakewalk that somebody had given me. This friend of mine had built me a computer, and, you know, up until that point, I had been recording on like the Roland VS880s, and,
right,
and like the 4 tracks. I had a 4-track that caught on fire. This is all, you know, back in the 1900s.
I haven't heard Cakewalk in forever. That was just a blip on the radar for a minute.
But the irony is, this song, I never demoed it. I demoed the rest of the record, and then we went in to produce the record with Fields. I met Fields a week and a half before, and I was like, hey, we need to make a record. You seem like the right guy. And it was all very fortuitous. A studio was open. We went in, and that was the very first song that we tracked, was Meant to Live.
Wow.
And we were working really fast. We only had the studio for like 6 days. So we're getting 2 songs done every day. And I remember we were testing. We were saying, okay, we want to cut drums to tape and see if it's better than cutting straight to Pro Tools.
The old saturation argument.
Yes. And so we did 2 performances, one that we liked to tape and one that we liked straight to Pro Tools. And we loved the saturation of the tape, but we liked the performance better for the Pro Tools one. So the rest of the record has drums that were cut to tape, but that one just went straight to Pro Tools. And it is that thing where at the end of it all, I don't know that anyone can hear the difference once it's mixed and mastered.
That's what I wanted to say, you know, and for the listeners, what we're talking about here with saturation, you know, the drums are just going to have that analog feel when you go to tape. They're going to sound a little fatter, and then you could, of course, bounce it to Pro Tools digitally. But, you know, most people are consuming their music through 2-inch earbuds these days. I just don't know if you're going to hear that, and the amount of time, as you know, to go to tape and then transfer everything when you can just do some nice little cuts and slices in Pro Tools. It doesn't seem that worth it. But good for you guys for trying that, and a lot of bands were doing that then.
It was funny that after all that was the only song that we didn't cut analog. You know, which in retrospect, you're like, well, I guess we could have cut the whole thing to Pro Tools anyways.
When you showed it to the rest of the band, and even yourself, what did you think of it, and what did Jon Fields think of it? What did the band think? I mean, obviously you cut it first, but you didn't demo it, and it sounds like it was something that was maybe written later in the process.
You know, rock songs are always hard for me to write. I can always come up with sad, introspective, like depressing music that comes to me really readily. Or even, you know, yearning, longing, honest stuff, but something that feels anthemic and big and like you want to turn your amp up. Maybe it's because I don't usually write music when I'm feeling happy. So for me, this was like the first song that I'd ever written that felt, you know, like it captured that. Let's turn the amps up, let's play it loud, and it feels congruent with the sounds and the lyrics. Everything fit together. When
you initially wrote it, was it pretty much what it is now, or did it go through some evolutions when you got with Jon and worked on it, or was all the lyrics there and pretty much all the parts and the arrangement? Everything was there. Yeah. I mean, we were tracking so fast, we didn't really have time to change anything. We would cut the song and then get most of the parts on, you know, overdubs and everything. And then we cut another song after lunch. Okay. And the reason I asked that, and I don't want to give, let the cat out of the bag too early here, but I thought this was going to be a producer thing. The tension at the end when you go to D and you never go back to the big other 2 choruses, it's incredible. That part is one of the coolest parts in a song. And I thought maybe that was something that, that producer in the 11th hour go, we should try something weird here. And you're like, what? So right. That you actually were doing that when you wrote it on acoustic? I think
just kind of holding the open strings, just letting them ring, just felt so good. And then again, more bends, because I love bends. I always like a song that feels like every part of it has a purpose for its existence. Mm-hmm. The second verse should have something that adds to the sonic texture, something that feels like, oh, this is a new element. Even I think in Meant to Live, the vocal melody changes and the pattern changes a little bit, just to kind of say, hey, this is a new part of the song. Yes, it's similar to the first verse, but we got to make it mean something. And for me, that last chorus, the reason for its existence is that it feels like somewhat of an arrival.
It's one of the strangest endings of a song to do that, but strange in the greatest way. Like I was completely marveling over it when I was dissecting the song. I'm like, and again, we'll really dive into it in a little bit. But when you brought it to Jon Fields, the producer, what was his initial reaction to the track? Was he into it? Was the word hit thrown around? Because you guys hadn't really had a hit at this point. It was your first major label record.
Jon Fields is so great. I love. We've had the privilege of working with a lot of amazing people, and he's absolutely one of them. And yeah, he gravitates. He would say the word hit. That's a hit. He's a.
We had producers say that on every one of our records. We never had one. So I need to meet Jon Fields.
I know, right? No, I mean, what is a hit? It's funny because it's a word that gets thrown around a lot, but I think ultimately, sometimes when you're chasing something that moves somebody else, it doesn't really matter if it doesn't move you. I think that's another thing that Fields really is good at, is making sure that he's moved by it. And I think the irony was, this was a very different song for us as a band. Earlier records didn't have anything this heavy on it. Mm-hmm. And so I actually had to borrow some amps from my friend to kind of find the way to voice, the parts I was hearing. My friend Matt Beckley gave me amps. I'm like, hey, can I borrow some amps? I got to get some heavier stuff here.
I'm really happy you said that, because I don't talk about amp setups on this show. I don't get into that because I don't want to lose listeners. Okay, that's going a little too far out of the songwriting. I do want to talk about that in a moment, because I'm telling you, This is one of the most killer distorted guitar tones I've ever heard put to record. It is so fat and great. And again, this record's going on 20 years old and it still sounds modern and current. It's great.
Thank you, man. Yeah, it was funny. So my friend Matt, he's an incredible musician in his own right. I went to college with him, and he's up in LA. I'm like, Matt, I got to borrow some of your gear. And so he lent me a bunch of things. And
do you recall what guitar and what amp setup there was for this?
I'm pretty sure it was his Bad Cat, and it was this special cabinet that he had that had one speaker open and one speaker closed. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember what we used. Again, we were going so fast. We weren't really keeping track of what we were doing. It was kind of like, does it sound good? Go. And that's my favorite way to work, Yeah,
and it's going back 20 years too. I'm expecting a lot when I ask that. Sometimes of artists like, you remember this setup? But I wanted to talk about it a little bit. Like I said, I don't get too much into gear on the show. The tone of it, it's just fat, it's thick, it sounds mean, but there's also this clean component to it. It's like the perfect sound for this song. It's awesome.
Well, thanks, man. I do remember when we were tracking, I had this idea to kind of have a strummy acoustic in the verses, where the electrics would die out and the strummy acoustic thing would play underneath the vocals. And that was one of the things that Fields had definitely put his foot down, and my brother as well, who plays bass in the band, Tim, was like, why are you doing that? It should be a rock song. Why do you want to play acoustic on it?
Well, again, not to foreshadow too much, but we'll get into the acoustics when they come in the bridge. It's so awesome.
Oh, thanks, man.
It's so good. Yeah, so I'm glad they weren't in the verses, because I think that they open up a whole new world there in the bridge when they come in. They're just beautiful.
Thanks. I remember the bridge. I wrote that one in the back of a 15-passenger van. Not that you've ever been in the 15-passenger van on tour before.
No, never. People don't know what they're missing, Jon. They really don't.
I'm telling you, that's where all the good songs are written, right?
Oh yeah, farts, feet, and everything else. It's a good time.
So my brother and I think it was, the best songs, they usually come together really quickly. And I had the rest of the song, and we were just kind of strumming it in the back of the van, and it came together somewhere up in Northern California. Bright sunny day, white 15-passenger van. What could go wrong?
There you go. And man, it's a running theme on this show. A lot of the best songs were written very quickly. Was the rest of the song, I guess minus the bridge, but was the rest of the song written quickly as well? Do you remember, like you said, it was on acoustic? Did it come together pretty quick, or did you have to go back and like toy with a verse too, or was it pretty much all there in that first setting?
No, I think it was a fast one. Yeah, especially then I was just really writing quick and having fun with it. And so, yeah, this one came together really fast.
That's awesome. Well, we're going to jump into the song right now. The song is 3 minutes and 21 seconds. That guitar riff starts. It's just so cool. It starts off left, it pans right, left, and back right. Then it's in stereo for a second until the 6-second mark, where we get a little reverse cymbal and a guitar swell, and then it drops into the full band. Really cool interplay between the two stereo guitars, with one of them doing some awesome string bends, and it's just a killer groove here, man. The top of this song is really tight.
Thank you. It's fun to play live too, because it doesn't quite play what you think it's going to play. I remember when we were first learning it to play as a band, it doesn't go every other. It's kind of a little bit more oddball, I suppose.
I love songs that the guitar hook is one of the most important things. And when this song starts, I went and watched some live videos. As soon as it starts, the audience loses their mind. It's immediate.
I love riff rock, I mean,
yeah.
I was in a Led Zeppelin cover band when I was a kid, and that was like, the reason is because, you've got the electric guitar. What else do you need? It's the meal right there.
Yeah, no, it's just, it's so cool when that guitar defines the song. And you guys would start, I watched pulled up a bunch of videos, as I do when I always like to go watch the live renditions of songs. And the minute that guitar hits, people lose their mind.
It's fun. It's fun to play.
Well, of course, this song is in drop D. Verse 1 starts at the 19-second mark.
Fumbling his confidence and wondering why the world has passed him by. Hoping that he's bent for more than arguments and failed attempts to fly.
Fumbling his confidence and wondering why the world has passed him by. Hoping that he's bet for more than arguments and failed attempts to fly. And you say fly again. What's going on here, Jon?
You could say it's a college kid trying to define who he is and why he is. I am a big fan of Kierkegaard, and I think the existential crisis of who we are and why we are is kind of at the root of many of the other things that we're wrestling with. And
did you say Kierkegaard?
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with that. Sorry. What is that?
Søren Kierkegaard is a Danish philosopher who basically, many would call him the father of existentialism, which is a philosophical tradition. And his wrestle with philosophy took the form of, why are we here? And finding it kind of an existential crisis, that out of that crisis, we're thrust into this new idea where we have this weight to what we do and why we do it. And so I find, especially during this season of my life, a lot of my lyrics were driven from that kind of a place.
That's cool inspiration. You had that. I've always wished. I mean, I've written about whatever before, but to have one like philosopher, someone I could key in on. I've never really had that. When people share that, I almost have like songwriting envy. I'm kind of hope I find that mojo someday. When this verse starts, the band stops and the guitars are ringing over the vocals on these first two lines. And then between that, the band comes in for two measures and the drums are playing like this staccato rhythm on the snare and drums. It's so cool. Do you remember that part coming together? I mean, obviously you wrote this on acoustic, but when you got in there to actually track the song, it was the first song you tracked. Was that part already worked out, or was that something you were putting together in the studio? I guess you didn't do a demo, so was there any kind of pre-production?
Yeah, I'm trying to think back on that too. At the time, we'd be like rehearsing wherever we could. Southern California, especially now, but even then, it was hard to find a spot to rehearse. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of the beat just kind of happened there when we first tracked it.
Mm-hmm.
And Chad's really got a lot of great instinct, and I feel like this part is pretty much what he would play, just kind of upon first hearing it. That's something that's right in his wheelhouse.
Well, a lot of times in a verse too, you don't have a musical interlude of 2 measures before the second half of the verse starts. It's not even the second half. I'm counting this all as one verse, but was there ever talk of, no, these four lyrics here, 4 lines of lyrics need to all be in succession, or was that part always there when you wrote it?
No, I think it was all there. And again, I was thinking we would string them together with the acoustics to kind of keep the energy consistent. And I'm really glad we didn't, but in my head, that's how the verse was coalescing, was with the acoustics kind of bringing it all together.
I'm glad you say I'm not really worried about the acoustics. It almost sounded like you're still thinking about it, like,
yeah.
20 years later, those dang acoustics should still be there.
I've let it go.
Okay. John's past it, everybody. It happens again, that stop on the second line, hoping that he's bet for more than arguments and failed attempts. I also wrote here, who mixed the record? Did John Fields mix it as well?
So we mixed the entire record with Jon Fields in LA. And then we had a couple songs that we chose to have mixed by other people. So I think this one and Dare You to Move were mixed by Tom Lord Alge in Florida.
Okay. Funny you should say that, because I've worked with Tom. I've worked with his brother Chris. The Lord Alges just have this thing, right? And I wrote here, I love the vocal treatment. And I thought it was one of the Lord Alge brothers. I wasn't going to say that, but it's interesting. I can hear it. It's so good. It's atmospheric. It's awesome.
Yeah, they're a lot of fun to work with. Yeah, and every time everything is right there. The first time you hear it, you're like, wow, how did that happen?
Yeah, no, the vocal treatment's awesome. Chorus 1 starts at the 45-second mark. That happens quick. We go to the key of G here, which is important because that last chorus, as we talked about, goes to the D, but we're in G here.
We were meant to live for so much more, and we lost ourselves somewhere. We live inside, somewhere we live inside. We were meant to live for so much more, and we lost ourselves somewhere. We live inside.
We were meant to live for so much more. Have we lost ourselves? Somewhere we live inside. Somewhere we live inside. We were meant to live for so much more. Have we lost ourselves? Somewhere we live inside.
I think, again, kind of the quandary of what it means to be human. And I think you can get really granular. For me as a college dropout, I do think I was wrestling with a lot of different things, as you do when you're 19, trying to figure out like what is worth living for. So the whole crux of the song, I feel like it's a pretty simple lyric. And I love the use of questions. I always think questions are probably more powerful than answers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, have we lost ourselves is kind of, that's the backbone of the entire song. And it never really resolves that question, but knowing that we're meant to live for more, I suppose that's some form of resolution right there.
I'm glad you said what you just said, because, I'm cautious with my words sometimes on this show. You never want to offend somebody. And the lyric here is kind of simple. And sometimes a simple lyric is it's too straightforward, or it's just too literal. But what is here, it speaks. And the fact that you knew it could be a simple lyric and still deliver is great.
I mean, if we're going back to Kierkegaard, he said, purity of heart is to will one thing. And I feel like simple things like, in art, purity of art maybe might be to will one thing, do one thing well. But I mean, most of my favorite works of art, they don't try and encompass the entire planet. They're trying to do one thing and speak to that one thing. So I get caught in that all the time, where I'm trying to say 14 things at the same time,
I mean, I love Rush and I love Bad Religion, but that's some highbrow lyrics in both of those bands. And it's just like, sometimes it goes over people's heads, and you need to make it a little more simple, but no one said these words how you put them here. They're unique and they're great.
I dare you to move. I dare you to move.
Hey, I don't dare you to move. I dare you to stay right here with us because we got lots more with Jon Foreman from Switchfoot after a few words from our sponsors.
Looking to elevate your music career? DistroKid is a digital music distribution service that enables musicians to distribute their music to online stores and streaming platforms such as Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube Music, Amazon, Tidal, and many more. DistroKid collects earnings and payments, sending them to you, the artist. With DistroKid, artists unlock a world of possibilities. From easily paying collaborators with splits, to securing your music with DistroLock, DistroKid covers all bases. Plus, you can promote your releases with Hyperfollow and create eye-catching visuals with a Spotify Canvas generator, all for free. But that's not all. Introducing the DistroKid app, now available on iOS and Android. Artists can manage their releases, view streaming stats, and withdraw earnings, all from the palm of their hand. And for those looking to perfect their sound, check out Mixia. With its simple interface and customizable mastering options, artists can make their music sound polished and professional within minutes. And don't forget about Instant Share, DistroKid's newest feature. Share large files securely with collaborators, producers, and more, ensuring your music streams at the highest quality. Ready to take your music to the next level? Download the DistroKid app and explore their suite of tools today. Plus, listeners can enjoy 30% off their first year by visiting distrokid.com/VIP/DeMakes. That's distrokid.com/VIP/DeMakes.
This episode is brought to you by MeUndies. Underwear drawers are like the Wild West. You never know what you're going to pull out or what shape it's in. So upgrade your collection with the buttery soft comfort of MeUndies. MeUndies' signature fabric is as soft as a warm hug from your favorite sweater. Plus, it's breathable and oh so comfy, making it ideal for all-day wear. Get 20% off your first order, plus free shipping at MeUndies.com/Spotify with code SPOTIFY. That's MeUndies.com/Spotify, code SPOTIFY.
Which Manning brother will win the FanDuel Kick of Destiny 3 on Super Bowl Sunday? Peyton or Eli? Watch the showdown live on Super Bowl Sunday. Plus, new customers bet $5 and get $200 if your bet wins. Only on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
21 plus and present in Virginia. Must be first online real money wager. $5 deposit required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus vest that expires 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See full terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Hey, this is Dewey Halpus, host of Peer Pleasure on the Sound Talent Media Podcast Network. Join me each week as I explore another long-form conversation with one of your favorite musicians, actors, comedians, or creatives. From Chino Moreno of the Deftones, John Gorley of Portugal the Man, to Fat Mike from NoFX and Ian Mackay from Fugazi and Minor Threat, we go all over the map. From Fall Out Boy to Slayer, Peer Pleasure has it all. Check us out now on Sound Talent Media.
Hey everyone, this is Tuck from Fit for a King, an off-road minivan. Every week I bring you fun interviews alongside your favorite metalcore entertainers with my new podcast, Get Tucked. Join me every Monday with bands like Counterparts, Crystal Lake, like Moths to Flames, and many more. We play unsigned and undiscovered bands, deep dive into each artist's history, and of course provide the greatest breakdowns in current metalcore. Tune in to Get Tucked every Monday, out now through Sound Talent Media.
And now, back to the show.
The drums in the chorus are playing a fairly straightforward beat, reminiscent of the intro. And then there's that palm muting guitar. I wrote in my notes, the chicka chicka, and the string bends throughout here. We get the first harmonies in the song on the lines, "Have we lost ourselves?" That happens twice. It's a very subtle, low harmony. I love that harmony. Do you recall how that came about? Was that something Jon suggested or something you came up with?
Yeah, so I remember, again, when you're working with Fields, you're working quick, and I love that, where you're literally running, you know? And so we had a pig nose amplifier that we would plug in, just like a 57, 58 or something like that into it. And we would sing through the pig nose into whatever vocal mic we were using. So that distortion that you hear on the background vocal track is actually in the room. It's just sung through the pig nose, which is super fun.
Wow, that is cool.
So that you're not affecting it later. It's just that's what you have. It's already distorted.
So you're committing to it right then.
Yeah.
Which is tough to do sometimes.
And again, you're not thinking about it. You're not obsessing and going, well, should we try this or this amp or this? It's just like, no, there it is. It sounds great. Let's go.
Yeah, and I love that. I love producers that keep it moving. There's nothing worse than lamenting on a part for 6 hours and at the end of it, you still didn't get anywhere. That's you want. You want to talk about you want to talk about frustrating, right?
Yeah. No, and I do think that ideas have a shelf life, you know?
Yeah.
Where I've heard jazz musicians talk about kind of the bell curve, where on the XY axis, you're learning the song, you're improving, that's getting better, but your enjoyment level of the song is also coming down. Every time you play it, you like it less, you know?
Never thought about it like that.
Yeah. You got to hit the sweet spot, like the third or fourth take. After that, you're kind of like, well, let's forget it. Let's do it tomorrow.
Well, how many times have you done what I call a scratch vocal or something? I've done it all the time, where you go, to do a couple more takes and the producer's going, no, we already got it. What do you mean? At first, when you did, when you weren't thinking about it.
Exactly.
Something to be said for that kind of spontaneity. The post-chorus I'm calling here, right after the chorus, there's like this drum breakdown groove again, but it's a new chord progression that comes in. Big drop D riff for 2 measures. Where did that come from? That introducing a new riff. It's almost like you'd go back to the intro riff there before verse 2. It's great.
Yeah, so much of this happened so fast. I think we're just having fun. Fields definitely has a great grasp on chordal elements and the musical moments. And I remember just having fun dreaming up where it could go. I think it being our first song, we weren't thinking about it too much, So it was like, let's try this, let's do that, let's try this. So I'm pretty sure a lot of these elements kind of came together on the spot.
Yeah, well, that part's great, and it's a perfect setup for verse 2.
Dreaming about Providence and whether mice and men have second tries. Maybe we've been living with our eyes half open. Maybe we're bent and broken.
Dreaming about Providence and whether mice or men have second tries. Love that lyric. Maybe we've been living with our eyes half open. Maybe we're bent and broken. Broken.
I love Steinbeck, and so that's a little reference.
Little nod to that.
And I like the fact that it's Steinbeck and that the bridge came from Northern California. It feels like it ties in there. And then I like maybe a lot. Again, with questions in the chorus and maybe, I think when you make big statements about the way the world is, it doesn't leave any room for the listener to find their place in the story. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you just ask a question and say maybe, it allows me, the listener, to say, well, do I agree with that sentiment or not? It forces me as a listener to kind of, I guess, invest myself in the storyline.
Interesting. Well, you touched on this earlier, and this second verse mimics the first in that the band does those stops after the first 2 lines, or the first line, and the third line. But what I love, and you talked about liking to build a song and change things up from first verse to second verse and what have you. The last 2 lines here, the melody changes, and it's awesome. It's killer where the melody goes there, and again, from the original demo, I know it's been a while and it happened quickly, but do you recall that being the same, or did you want something different there?
No, I remember that was the way it was written. It's funny because I often will try and treat songs like Sudoku, where you're trying to make it all match and make it all even. But I think my favorite songs are the ones that have things that poke out and feel different, you know? And so I'm trying to remind myself even now, make things quirky, make things weird. You know, those are the things that stick with you.
Man, you just touched on a memory for me. I haven't thought of this probably in 25 years. I think it was our first major label record. I wanted the second verse to be like the first verse. And the producer's saying, why is the word go there at the end? Well, because it's the same syllables as the first. He's like, it doesn't need to be there. I'm like, yeah, but then it's not. He's like, no, why does that matter? He's like, did the Beatles do that? He starts listening to all these bands. I'm like, okay, you know, and I was like you. I thought it was like a puzzle where it had to kind of be the same, and there's no rules in songwriting.
Yeah. And if anything, the things that make it different, those are the things that stick with you. That's the peanut butter in there, right? It just kind of keeps you chewing on it.
Well, we're now in chorus number 2, and right before chorus number 2, you let out this ow. Was that just you were clearing your throat, checking the mic, something that was left in there, or was that intentional?
I'm sure it was intentional. The beautiful thing about rock and roll is it's so many of the things that happen, you can't really figure out why they happen or why you like them, but the visceral elements that I think that drew me to Led Zeppelin, for example, you know, it wasn't his lyrical prowess, you know. It was just the way it made me feel. So I feel like that's probably where that was coming from.
Okay. Because that sometimes those little accents happen. I've had people say I was just warming up my voice, and the mixer left it in. You know, it's like, oh, that's cool.
Right.
Chorus 2. And here you hold out inside. You give it a good long hold out at the end there. And then we come into a reintro for 4 measures here. And it's not the post-chorus riff that was going on. It is actually back to the reintro.
I think the intro hook is kind of the strongest thing. So we're trying to figure out how many places we could put that in. Those things you were mentioning, the chickas or the rockas or whatever you want to call those things.
The chickas.
we ended up, I remember tracking them. There's like harmonics that we tracked and overdubbed into those because every now and then they would come through, but we were like, I remember saying, oh, we need to actually bring them, instead of muting them, let's turn them up and retrack them with just the harmonics in there.
Yeah, it adds that grit to it. It's really cool. You know, now we're into the bridge, and you know, a lot of times the bridges are my favorite parts of songs, and I think with this one, it really is. There's something about this bridge that just, it is such a move in another direction, and then you get that last chorus, which we're going to get to in a second. So from the bridge out, this whole song is like, where's this thing going?
We want more than this world's got to offer. We want more than this world's got to offer. We want more than the wars of our fathers. And everything inside screams for second life. Yeah,
we want more than this world's got to offer. We want more than this world's got to offer. We want more than the wars of our fathers. And everything inside screams for second life. Yeah.
This lyric to me still feels intact and very tangible and real. When you're a kid, we want more than the wars of our fathers means one thing. But now that I have kids, I have 2 kids, and I think, what kind of planet am I leaving them, you know? And I think it can mean the tanks and guns and aircraft carriers, but it can also mean the inner wars that we're all struggling with and wrestling with. And so, yeah, this bridge for me definitely feels powerful almost 20 years later.
I think the lyrics great. We want more than this world's got to offer. I mean, who doesn't? Who can't relate to that? And then the last line, just total goosebump moment, and everything inside screams for second life. That's just that's great. On the second line here, the bass guitar is playing some really catchy notes there. It's just the runs that are happening there are awesome. And it sounds like single notes on a guitar turned into feedback there on that second line that's happening.
So the bass, my brother Tim plays the bass, and he is so good he's deceptively good, because he's not showy or flashy or anything like that. Like John Entwistle kind of stuff. It's all very tasteful, but it's the stuff that you need to really make that section pop, and then a lot of the guitar stuff, the feedback and all that. I mean, I'm a big fan of seeing what happens when you track. And sometimes what is that? The mistake reveals the hidden intention. The idea that
I've never heard that. That's great.
Yeah. Like sometimes feedback will tell you where you want to go. The feedback will kind of, there it is. I feel like those wrong notes are the right ones,
Yeah, well, this whole part, you got the big guitars ringing out when this bridge happens. The acoustic guitars come in. The shakers are now in. You got some shakers present. Stereo guitars are still strumming underneath, but they're mixed really low. You can feel them more than you can hear them. And am I hearing some single note pianos, or is these guitar harmonics in there? Do you recall?
So, yeah, I finally got the acoustics in there, right?
Yeah, here we go. You arrived. Here's John's moment. You got his darn acoustics.
There it is. And yeah, I think we did the place we were tracking, Sage and Sound up in LA, which I don't think is there anymore, had this great piano, and the low octaves, when you hit a octave down there, it just felt beautiful and grand. And so I think we would do that. I think maybe even the whole way out, even in the chorus coming out, is that there's the presence of these big grand piano hits.
I thought I heard some piano there. It's so great. That's really cool. Was that something, again, that Jon thought of, you guys thought of, or one of his tricks?
That's one of his tricks. I mean, a lot of these tricks are things that we now do all the time. So it's almost hard to know, was that his or not? But most of the things we do, we learned from him. So I'm pretty sure we learned it from him during that session.
I've always said I'm the luckiest SOB in the world. Think of the education that we got working with these guys. Some of these guys are geniuses. Like I got to work with Rob Cavallo, Green Day's guy. It's like the stuff this guy would tell me and that I learned is just, you can't put a price tag on that.
No, it's so fun. And Rob's great.
Yeah. Rob is a unique man. Hi, Rob. If you're listening for some reason, I love you, buddy. Going into the last chorus here, at the very end of the bridge, the drums, the snare and the toms, the breakdown comes back there on the end. And on the it sounds like your voice breaks up and kind of cracks there. Was, again, that intentional, or was that a cracked voice and you're like, nope, that's the take?
I'm pretty sure I probably said, oh, we gotta take it again. And Tim and Fields are like, no, man, that's it. There we go.
It's rock and roll, right? You're leaving it in. You're leaving it in, because it really, to me, the crack in your voice there, it's human emotion. I don't think you could probably go back and try to emulate that fake. I don't even know if you try to make your voice crack live when you do it, but you can't fake something like that, really.
Yeah, and it's so funny too how all the inconsistencies and the idiosyncratic elements that are, you could call them mistakes, truly make a song human, which is what we want. We want human music. We don't want robots,
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's, again, why, I talk about it all the time on the show. It's like Pro Tools, copy and paste the first, second, and third choruses. When you hear that in pop music, that's why a lot of it sounds generic. You're not making stuff be its own thing and breathe and have those little mistakes, as we call them, that make it feel real. This last chorus here, I know we've talked about it a couple of times. I want to get into it. tension on this third chorus is so great. It doesn't go back to the big G of the other choruses 1 and 2, but the riff kind of revolves around that big drop D chord. Did Jon ever say, no, we got to go back to the other chorus? What are you doing here? Or let's do half of it this way and then jump to the other thing? Because that's the really, really cool thing about the bridge, is the reason that I think it had to go to D, because it goes to that killer C chord at the very end of the bridge, and then to G, where you would normally start the chorus, but now you're already in G, that you had to go somewhere else. It is a key change, but it doesn't feel like one.
Yeah, and the vocal stays in the same melody, the same range,
Yeah.
And so I think it adds this tension. I think I can't remember how that came to be, but I do remember, again, just loving the way that those open lower strings, drop D, A, D, just ringing those things out at the bottom there. It's such a visceral feeling where you hit that, and you know what I'm talking about, where it just feels so good. And so I think that was kind of what drove the whole thing.
And I also think it's odd, and don't take this the wrong way, I almost feel like this chorus could have been chorus 1 and chorus 2 and 3 could have been the other ones at the top, because this is kind of droney. I don't, gosh, I don't want to say this, but I am. It's almost not as catchy as the other two, but I think it's a perfect way to end the song. The tension here is so good. And to your point, the melody's the same, even though the chords aren't.
Yeah. I
had to listen to it like 3 or 4. I'm going, what the hell's going on here? Why does this feel so different? And then I picked up the guitar and I'm like, okay, wow, that's a cool trick I've never done.
And these are things where if you try and do the math of it, again, the Sudoku puzzle, there's something off. It's off, but it feels off in the right way.
Yeah, you were drunk when you did the puzzle. It's not working.
Right.
No, this part's perfect here. We're getting the harmonies on Have We Lost Ourselves, and on the fourth line, Have We Lost Ourselves, the melody changes there. It's that lower, I love that melody change there. And again, I'm going to ask you probably don't remember, was that there from the beginning, or is that something you were toying with in the studio?
I'm sure it was just a response to the music that we had to change it because of the chordal differences of chorus 3 versus chorus 1 and 2.
I love the backing vocals here on the We Were Meant to Live, the live, they hold out there underneath. It's just that layer here was never there in the other choruses. So again, the song's building, you're introducing different stuff, and that part's great. And the very last line is just sung by you alone. And then there's like 3/4 of a measure alone of the intro over that running theme, the snare and tom drum breakdown, and then you're ending on a big open E chord. And that's how the song ends. Yeah, again, was that there from the beginning? Where'd that come from?
I think it was just that first time playing through the song. It just felt like, here's where it's going to go. Endings of songs are always they're tricky, some songs are like, the reason why you have these long fades on songs is because the people in the studio couldn't figure out how to end it,
So true. I've said that before. It's like, why is this song fade? It's like they couldn't figure out how to friggin' end it.
Right? Yeah. So, and endings can sometimes feel like, I love ending on the E because it really doesn't resolve. I think it matches the tension of the lyric and the rest of the song as well.
I call it the suspense chord, and it gets me every time. I'm a sucker for it. I love it. I love that, and like you said, for this in particular, this third chorus, it even adds more to that tension that's already there.
All the greats, Duke Ellington, they never start or end, like they might end on the 1, but they'd always start on the 2. And I love that, where you feel like, even if it's just for your own sense of things, where you think, oh, this is for me, this is why we're doing it.
Sure. Well, Jon, I just want to thank you for sitting in. Congratulations on all your success, and let the listeners know what's going on in your world. Switchfoot, what do you got coming up? What's going on?
Yeah, we just put out our 12th album. It's called Interrobang, and an interrobang is a question mark juxtaposed on top of an exclamation mark, which feels like the season we're in, And so it was made in LA, Sound City, with Tony Berg, and we're really proud of it. We think it's one of our best records, and we were on tour last year. We're hoping to get out again this year, and I mean, like with every band, right? Where you're like, I'm not sure what that means, but we hope to see you soon. Yeah. So that's what's going on with us. And I feel just so thankful to be alive, thankful to be talking music. Thanks for the great questions.
Thanks for being on. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
Hey, everybody, don't touch that dial. There's plenty more Chris DeMakes a Podcast after a few words from our sponsors.
Every listener to Too Much Effing Perspective knows that my co-host Alan Keller is a music nerd. And right up there in his pantheon with the Beatles and Elvis Costello is The Clash. So Alan, it's one thing for you to be a nerd, but how did you rope in a cool guy, 311's Nick Hexum, into a full-on Clash geek fest on our show?
Well, first of all, Alex, it was your idea.
Oh, right.
Second, Nick actually jammed with The Clash's Joe Strummer in a supergroup that included Flea and Tom Morello.
Okay, well, there is that.
And finally, one member of The Clash cited This Is Spinal Tap, the reason our show even exists, as his favorite movie.
Which one?
Hey, if you want to find out, you got to listen to Too Much Effing Perspective. That's Too Much EFFING Perspective. The only podcast you crank up to 11.
Hey, what's up? My name's Lurk, and I'm the host of Lambgoat's Van Flip podcast. Every week, I have in-depth conversations with bands from all over the scene, big and small. We also like to keep our finger on the pulse and showcase up-and-coming bands on the show as well. So come check out Lambgoat's Van Flip podcast.
Bowie, Dylan, Marley. You've heard the names and maybe you've heard their songs, but what about the stories behind the records that made titans of music like these so universally loved and important? Join me, Josh Adam Myers, host of The 500, as each week I go through a different album from Rolling Stone magazine's 500 Greatest Albums list from 2012 with an incredible lineup of comedians, actors, and musicians talking about how the music has impacted their lives. New episodes of The 500 come out every Wednesday. Listen now wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, I'm Daniela Clark.
I'm Barbara Ann Wild.
And we are the Honest AF Show.
Our podcast is real, honest conversation with our celebrity friends and pros.
Covering our anything but average rock and roll lifestyles.
All while tackling the hell that is aging and the battle of beauty.
Oh yeah, nothing is off the table.
The Honest AF Show is available wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, everybody. I'm Bruce.
And I'm Nolan, and this is the Corner of Gray Street podcast. As longtime Dave Matthews Band fans, we set out to create a podcast to dive deep into the past, present, and future of DMB.
Not only do we recap and review shows within an ongoing tour, but we revisit past shows from throughout the band's history, conduct interviews with a wide variety of guests with ties to DMB, and create unique and exclusive content like our Concerts on the Corner series.
Whether you're a fan of the band or just a fan of great music, we think you'll find something you'll enjoy. We can't wait to see you on the Corner of Gray Street.
Hey everyone, it's Chris Pandolfi inviting you to check out the new season of my podcast, Inside the Musician's Brain, with new episodes airing now.
Hearing it in that room, these guys playing this thing and trying to figure out how to play this song was mind-blowing. It's so inspiring to know there's so much more to it than you ever thought. And it just opened another door.
But when people find faith because they need to, in terms of just filling a void to feel better without actually being better, that's when it becomes a crutch, much like drugs and alcohol do.
Man, I don't have all the time in the world here. If I want to be a professional bluegrass musician, I felt like I had to take a very strategic approach, just trying to get rid of the barriers and figure out what those barriers were.
The feelings still come and I have to reckon with that, but I think I have better ways of moving forward and not being stuck, which I think was the killer for me.
Catch all that and so much more on the new season of Inside the Musician's Brain.
As we near the end of the show, here's a band you might not know.
Welcome to this week's Band You Might Not Know. If you'd like your band to be considered for Chris DeMakes a Podcast, all you have to do is email your song via MP3 only and your bio to bandyoumightnotknow@gmail.com. This week's featured artist is Death or Fireworks from Sydney, Australia. They're a 5-piece band that blends acoustic guitar riffs, catchy choruses, and a whole lot of love. Here's a snippet of their song, I Wrote This Song for You.
I know rock and roll just ain't her thing, but she's always side of stage when I sing. I wrote this song for you, it's all that I can do. This girl, she may be the one, she's so smart, I'm in love. It's like she's Jenny and I'm Forrest Gump. You know what love is, I know it's not been long, but still we're going strong. It's like we're here by design, oh I'm so glad she's mine.
The Wrap with Chris and Chris.
So, Chris, before we get into talking about this episode, I got to tell you one thing that's really funny about every time you're recording an episode, what I do the entire time. And that is I snack so hard while you're recording your podcast. I don't know, something about just as the producer of this show, just there's nothing wrong. Just this natural sort of anxiety just makes me snack so hard. I made fake chicken nuggets. I ate Ritz crackers, cheese, all kind of stuff. But I do that every time you're recording an episode. Did you know that?
I did not know that. And I, luckily for you, you haven't gained any visible weight. I mean,
right.
After 80, 100 episodes, whatever we've done, I mean, you could be severely obese here, Chris. I thought that's the last thing I thought you were going to tell me just now.
Hey, well, I usually work out right before this too. That might contribute to it, but it's the same thing. Like I don't know if I'm like watching a football game or something. I snack so hard, but I just want to tell you that I thought that's pretty funny, like how much I snacked during that episode.
You were meant to snack for so much more.
I was meant for something more snacks. But I thought that episode was great. I thought Jon was, and Jon, if you're listening, I mean this in the nicest way possible. I thought he was the most San Diego guy ever. and what's funny is I'm like, kind of looks like a surfer. And then I looked it up. I'm like, oh, their band's named after a surfing term and they really love to surf. And he just has that whole vibe about him. Like, I want to be friends with him. I want to go hit the waves with him. You know, he's very cool, chill guy.
And not that you have to be college educated, to be articulate, but just, he kept talking about being a college dropout, but this guy was just well put together. He had a lot of great insight and great things to say about the song.
He's a very philosophical guy, and I like that. He's philosophical in a very friendly way. And I could see, I don't mean to keep bringing this back to surfing. I don't know if he still surfs, but I know that was like part of their background. But I could see someone who's out there in the waves, experiencing nature, and to get into philosophy. He brought up Kierkegaard. Now, I, of course, as you probably did too, Chris, took philosophy classes in college. And, I pick up bits here and there, whether it's Socrates or Confucius or Karl Marx or whoever it is, you pick up bits and pieces here. But Kierkegaard is a guy that I have several friends who are like very into Kierkegaard, who I guess he's considered kind of the first existentialist philosopher, basically meaning you're thinking about like, why are you here? Why do I exist? Which really fits into the theme of this song.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, he was just very well spoken, and some of the references that he was pointing out was just, sometimes you can't judge a book by its cover. Like you see this long-haired surfer guy, and he starts speaking like, "Wait a second, the mouth doesn't match the look." But I thought he was great, and I meant it when I said to him, this song is a great track.
It's really cool that a lot of times with existentialism, you have this thing, it's called existential angst, which is basically you feel dread in the face of thinking that all of this is meaningless or all of this is so absurd. But I feel like the theme of this song is more putting that feeling in a positive light. Like this is the opposition to that. This is like having confidence in our existence. Like there's something more to this.
I don't know what to say to that.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's what I take for this. That's what I take from this song. And also what I took from this episode, I thought it was cool that It sounds like they busted out this song in half a day in the studio. Is that what he said?
I mean, yeah, I kept saying to him, did this change or that change? He's like, it happened so quick. He's like, I wrote it. We didn't even demo it. Went in. It was the first track that they cut for the record. And he said producer John Fields just worked at this insanely rapid pace, which I agreed. I'd rather have a producer going breakneck than, like I said, there's nothing worse than sitting in a studio lounge for 5 hours lamenting over, what the bass part should be. And you just waste time. It's non-productive, and usually at the end of it, you end up going back to your first idea because you didn't get anywhere.
Right, you get to the point where you don't like the song anymore, just because you're sick of it. It could be a great song, and you're sick of it. I know you've experienced that. I've experienced that in my band. We've had songs we've completely scrapped, like recorded everything, got to the vocals. Just experienced this recently. We uncovered a couple songs from 10 years ago that were finished except for the vocals. We're so sick of trying to figure it out that we just nope. So, like he said, you're talking about the breakneck speed of recording here. Does it sound good? All right, go. And he said that's the way he likes to work. And I think that's a great way to work if you can make that work.
Yeah, there's something to be said about that spontaneity. I mean, if you're sitting around and you think it sounds great and you're looking at the producer and the rest of the guys in the band and you're all in the moment and you're like, that sounds awesome, then if it's not broke, don't fix it. What else is there to do at that point? You run with it.
I really love the thing he said about not chasing what you think will move others, but just create what moves you. Because I'll be honest, there's been times where I or my band have tried to think what would really relate to people, I think 99.9% of the time that song is going to fall flat and be a dud.
It usually does when you try or set out to write a hit. Hits just happen. Most of the time they happen because you were sitting there in the room with your acoustic playing a song that gave you those goosebumps, that made you feel good, that made you want to share it with somebody else. And those are the ones that become the hits.
If you're putting yourself into the song and not just trying to please others, I think you gotta have a little confidence in yourself that if it pleases you, it will please other people. And it all comes down to, I like several times he said that he didn't want to think of songwriting as like a Sudoku puzzle. And that makes a lot of sense because I think a lot of people do think of it that way.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. And speaking of puzzles, something that really puzzles me is why anyone on Earth wouldn't join our supporting cast.
It doesn't make any sense to me, man. I know it's our supporting cast program, but for real, for a few bucks a month, you can help us keep making this podcast forever if you enjoy it, and you get extra episodes every week, and you could be on Defeat DeMakes. You know the deal. We're always talking about this, but if you want to help us out, you can go to chrisdemakes.com. You sign up there, you get the after party episodes. You can be on Defeat DeMakes. There's lots of other stuff, discounts on merch. We're going to have some Zoom parties coming up. We're trying to incorporate more and more things into it. And yeah, for the cost of buying me and Chris a beer every month because you like our podcast, you can help us continue making this thing.
That's right. We'd love to have you be a part of it. We got a lot of great surprises coming in the next few months. So please go over to chrisdemakes.com and sign up and be part of our supporting cast. We'd really appreciate that. Please give me a follow on Instagram at @LessThanChristy, and I'm still doing those custom songs. Get at me, chrisdemakes@gmail.com. I'd love to write you or that special someone a very, very cool song or a jingle for your business. I do those too. So want to thank this week's guest, Jon Foreman from Switchfoot, for sitting in with us. And we'll see you next week.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
I don't think it overstates things to say that the Beatles were the greatest gift to entertainment and culture of our time. A secular religion, if you will, with their universal appeal and demonstrable impact on people's lives. I'm Robert Rodriguez, host of Something About the Beatles. With every episode, I speak with historians, musicians, artists, and Beatle witnesses, all in the service of fresh insights into the most joyous cultural entity the world has ever known. I hope you'll join me and listen to Something About the Beatles, now on Evergreen and wherever you get your podcasts.